Okay, so are you ready to dive into some political intrigue today?
Hmm.
And maybe even a little bit of
I'm
scandal?
always up for that.
All right, good. So we're talking about Matt Gaetz today.
Okay.
Now, this guy is a former Florida congressman, firebrand conservative, one of Trump's most vocal supporters.
Yeah.
And for a hot minute,
Yeah.
Trump's pick for attorney general.
Yeah. It's quite a story.
It's a wild story.
It is.
It's a head scratcher. And that's really what we're here to unpack today. Like,
Yeah.
is this guy a true political visionary
Hmm.
who ruffles feathers because he's, shaking things up?
Mm.
Or is he just a master manipulator who's figured out how to use controversy to his advantage?
Yeah.
So in other words, the big question,
Yeah.
grifter.
Or gifted.
I think to really get into that, we need to sort of start with, like, who is this guy and where did he come from?
Lay some groundwork.
So, Gates comes from a very prominent political family in Florida.
Okay.
His father was the president of the Florida State Senate.
He's a lawyer himself, graduated from a top law school.
Yeah.
And, sort of rode that wave of populism that we saw in 2016 right into Congress.
So not exactly the outsider that he sometimes portrays himself to be.
Exactly.
But things get really interesting in 2020 when the Justice Department opens an investigation into Gates.
Yeah.
This becomes public in 2021, and suddenly we're hearing words like sex trafficking, the Mann Act, obstruction of justice. This is heavy stuff.
Absolutely.
So can you break down, like, what exactly is the Mann Act and why is that relevant in this case?
Yeah. So the Mann Act is basically this federal law that makes it a crime to transport anyone across state lines for what they deem immoral purposes,
Okay.
which is usually interpreted as prostitution or other sexual acts.
I gotcha.
It's been used in other high-profile cases, and it's a federal crime, which means the stakes are really high.
Okay, so that explains the feds being involved.
Right.
But this is where Joel Greenberg comes in.
Right.
Now, this is Gates's close friend and political ally who ends up pleading guilty to a whole bunch of charges, including sex trafficking of a minor.
Yes. And this is really where the investigation into Gaetz originates from. Greenberg agrees to cooperate with the government as part of his plea deal, and he reportedly provides information about Gates's involvement in this network.
So we're talking about paying for sex with young women, potentially.
Potentially.
Including a minor.
Potentially including a minor.
Okay, so let's get into the specific accusations against Gaetz.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of layers to this.
Yeah.
We're talking about allegations of him paying for sex with a 17-year-old girl, using Venmo to send money to women, allegedly for sex.
Right.
And even instructing them on meeting times and places. Now, of course, Gaetz denies all of this.
Of course.
But with the allegation of a minor being involved.
That's when things get really serious, because then you're talking about potential sex trafficking charges under federal law.
Right. And it doesn't matter if Gaetz claims he didn't know her real age.
Right.
Like, if she was transported across state lines for this,
Yeah.
it's still a federal crime.
Exactly.
And then there's this whole other element of the sugar daddy thing,
Right.
with reports of Gaetz using platforms like Seeking Arrangement
Yeah.
to connect with these women. So it gets really murky when you start talking about power dynamics and consent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even if everyone involved is legally an adult, Gaetz being a congressman creates this inherent power imbalance in those relationships.
Okay, so then things get even wilder.
Yeah.
Because now Gaetz is claiming he was being extorted over this whole investigation.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is.
There's talk of a hostage in Iran and demands for millions of dollars.
Yeah. Gaetz claims that these individuals told him they could secure a pardon from Trump if he paid up and helped them free this hostage.
So are you saying they were going to pardon him for the sex trafficking?
That seems to be the implication.
Wow. Okay, so then in 2022, the DOJ actually recommends NO charges against Gaetz.
Yeah.
And they officially close the investigation in 2023. That's right.
So you think that's the end of it?
Not quite, because remember, the House Ethics Committee is doing its own investigation.
Oh, right. Separately.
Totally so.
Okay. And this is where it gets even more complicated.
It does, because during this investigation, Joel Leppard, who represents two of the women involved,
Okay.
comes forward with some pretty explosive testimony.
So what did he say?
Well, his clients allege that Gaetz actually used his so-called adopted son, Nestor Galbin's PayPal account to pay them for sex.
Hold on. So he was funneling money through his son.
That's what they're claiming. And it's important to note that Gaetz and Galbin aren't legally related.
Right. Right. I remember that.
But Gaetz does refer to him as his son.
Okay. So back to Leppard and his clients.
So one of the women even testifies that she saw Gaetz having sex with a 17-year-old girl.
Okay. But isn't that hearsay?
It is hearsay, but it's corroborated by other evidence. The Venmo transactions, for example.
Which the Ethics Committee was able to verify. That's right. Both women claimed that Gaetz paid them for sex, and the committee was able to corroborate that with financial records.
But Gaetz denies this whole thing.
He does. He's claiming it's all a political smear campaign.
So on top of all this, there are even more details that emerge.
Yeah. Like what?
Like Gaetz allegedly showing his colleagues photos and videos of women he'd slept with.
Really?
Yeah. There were allegations of drug use at parties.
Yeah.
And there's even a leaked DOJ diagram that supposedly shows this whole network of payments to women.
So it's like every time you think this story can't get any crazier, it does.
It really does.
Yeah.
So how does Gaetz respond to all this?
Predictably, he denies any wrongdoing, claims he's the victim of a political witch hunt,
Of course.
that any payments were just acts of generosity, and that his enemies are trying to take him down.
Which brings us to another piece of the puzzle. Gaetz's recent political moves.
Right. Like what?
Like he was a key figure in the effort to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a staunch defender of Trump during both of those impeachment trials.
Uh-huh.
And he even reportedly sought a presidential pardon from Trump.
While he was under federal investigation.
Apparently so.
That's bold.
It is. It makes you wonder what his angle was.
Doesn't it? And all this ties into his brief and very controversial nomination for Attorney General.
Right. Like, why would he even go for that?
It seemed like an incredibly risky move.
Given all the baggage he was carrying.
Exactly.
So we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do.
Let's take a breather.
Okay.
And then come back and dig into what all of this means.
Sounds good.
Stay with us.
I mean, the Senate was definitely not happy about the nomination.
Yeah.
You know, several Republicans even publicly expressed concerns about all the allegations.
Right. So it's safe to say his confirmation wouldn't have been easy.
Oh, it would have been battle, for sure.
And even though the DOJ had officially closed the investigation, there were still so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And then there were those rumors about the House Ethics Committee report.
Right. The one that was never officially released?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But everyone was saying it was pretty damning.
Uh-huh. With all the details about the Venmo payments and the witness testimony.
So do you think he withdrew from the nomination to try and get ahead of the story?
It's possible. He might have been hoping to avoid even more scrutiny.
Yeah. Because it's not like all that stuff was just going to go away.
Right. It's not like he could have just swept it all under the rug.
And the timing is interesting, too. He withdrew just days before the Ethics Committee was supposed to release its findings.
Yeah. Do you think that was a coincidence?
I don't know. It makes you wonder if he knew it was coming and decided to cut his losses.
Maybe. He was like, time to jump ship.
So let's talk about the bigger picture for a second. How do all these scandals and controversies impact Gaetz's legacy?
That's a tough question.
I mean, he resigned from Congress,
He did.
but he's still a relatively young guy. Could he make a political comeback?
I mean, he definitely has a loyal following among the Médicis base, but these scandals have definitely tarnished his reputation. It's hard to imagine him holding any kind of high-profile office anytime soon.
Right. Unless Trump wins another term and brings Gaetz back into the fold.
True, Trump does value loyalty above almost everything else.
Right. So it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not. But even Trump might hesitate.
Yeah. A lot of baggage.
It is.
But it's interesting, though, how Gaetz seems to thrive on all this chaos.
In a way.
Like,
yeah.
he's a master of generating controversy.
He is.
He's always in the spotlight, even if it's for the wrong reasons.
He definitely knows how to work a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
how to appeal to people's emotions, how to play the victim when he needs to.
So love him or hate him,
Yeah,
he's a captivating figure.
absolutely.
So after diving deep into all of this, what are the key takeaways here?
What do we really know about Matt Gaetz?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the allegations against him are serious, even if they haven't been proven in court. The DOJ might have closed its investigation, but there are still a lot of unanswered questions.
And the House Ethics Committee clearly found some disturbing information.
They did.
It also seems like Gaetz's ambition might have gotten the better of him.
Yeah, how so?
Like, he was so eager to become Attorney General that he underestimated how much scrutiny would come with the job.
That's true. It's also really hard to separate his personal life from his political ambitions, his relationship with Joel Greenberg, his alleged behavior at parties, his willingness to push boundaries. It all suggests a pattern of risky behavior.
And a disregard for the rules.
Exactly.
So the big question remains,
Yeah.
grifter or gifted?
Right. Is he this brilliant political mind who's been unfairly targeted, or is there something darker going on?
So what do you think?
It's a tough call, honestly. There's evidence to support both sides.
Yeah.
It really comes down to how you interpret the facts.
What you believe about Gaetz's motives.
Exactly. We're not here to tell you what to think.
Right.
Just to give you the tools to form your own opinion.
What stands out to you about Matt Gaetz?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by how much he seems to thrive on chaos.
Oh, interesting.
Like he's a master manipulator, a showman. He knows how to create a spectacle, how to distract and deflect.
So you're saying you think he's more grifter than gifted?
I'm not saying that outright, but I am saying he's someone who understands how to play the game.
Okay.
And he's very, very good at it.
All right, folks. There you have it. The Matt Gaetz saga.
Quite a saga.
A tale of ambition, scandal, political intrigue.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
If Gaetz did engage in all of this, why would he risk it all for a position like Attorney General?
Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, does it?
It really doesn't.
I mean, maybe he thought if he became Attorney General, he could use the power of that office to shield himself, to protect himself from all that scrutiny.
Interesting.
Or maybe he saw it as an opportunity, to really push his agenda.
Even if it meant breaking a few rules along the way? That's a risky move, though.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you're already under investigation.
Right. And facing all these allegations.
Exactly. It takes a certain level of audacity, maybe even arrogance.
Like he thought he was untouchable?
Yeah. Almost like he was above the law.
Which brings us back to that question we keep coming back to.
Grifter or gifted?
Right? Is he just playing a different game than everyone else?
Right. Like some kind of 4D chess.
Or is this just recklessness?
Self-destruction.
Maybe a little bit of both.
Oh, no. I don't have a crystal ball. But I do think one thing's for sure.
What's that?
We haven't heard the last of Matt Gaetz.
That's probably true.
This guy's a survivor.
Yeah.
He always manages to stay in the spotlight.
Even if it's for all the wrong reasons.
Right. Exactly.
So for our listeners who are trying to make sense of all this,
Yeah.
what are the biggest takeaways from the Matt Gaetz saga?
Well, I think his story is a good reminder to be careful about ambition.
Okay.
Like what happens when it goes unchecked. And I think it really shows how corrosive power can be.
Right. Like how people can be tempted to exploit the system for their own personal gain.
Absolutely. Even in a system like ours, with all these checks and balances.
So we need to stay vigilant.
Yeah.
We need to hold our leaders accountable.
No matter who they are.
Exactly. Because ultimately, the choices they make have real-world consequences.
Absolutely.
They impact all of us.
Well said. All right, folks. That's the Matt Gaetz story.
A story for the ages.
A tale of ambition, scandal, and political intrigue.
Get a lot to process.
It really is. But we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah. Some things to think about.
Grifter. Gifted.
The jury's still out.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.